patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278. Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Dan DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us. And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. I am Bill Snyder. It's great to be with you this evening, and thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Patchwork Heart Radio. Thank you for listening to Sowing Hope, wherever you're listening to us. And I'm always joined by my good friend, Andy Santis. Ann, how are you today?
Oh, doing great, Bill. It's good to be here. Happy August.
Yes, happy August. Yeah, I can't believe we're in August of 2021 already. It's unbelievable. But I know we have a great guest with us today, so why don't you introduce us to him?
Yes, I'm very pleased to bring to you a very good friend of mine and the foundation that I represent. We have Marek Rudak, and I'm going to read you his bio because it's really an amazing bio. Will give you an idea of who he is. He is an ICF credentialed coach on a mission to employees to earn their dream promotions by growing their leadership skills. He was born in communist Poland and lost his dad at a young age. When his mom remarried at age 14, Marek moved to the United States. Feeling like he was the fifth wheel in his new family led him toward a desire to control. He focused on earning his worth through accomplishments. Marek graduated in the top 10% of his class at West Point and became a ranger in the 82nd Airborne Division, where he deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Upon separating from the Army, Marek went with the highest paying job he could find, ExxonMobil, where he worked on multi-billion-dollar projects all over the world for 10 years. A tough divorce led Marek to a lot of soul searching and multiple life changes. After meeting the love of his life, Marek decided to quit his job and commit himself to coaching full-time. Currently, Marek provides on-demand executive coaching as a benefit to C-suite leaders and their teams nationally and internationally for companies like Zillow Group, Autodesk, Pinterest, NASDAQ, the New York Times, and TechNipFMC. If you have questions about your situation, you can schedule a complimentary call with him by clicking, well, I'm reading his bio, but there's a Calendly, he has a Calendly link. But you can go to his website and see that link there if you'd like to schedule that complimentary call at marekrudak.com. Welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us on Sowing Hope.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for this beautiful introduction, and pleasure to meet you, Bill. I know we kind of talked a little bit back and forth on Facebook, so it's actually very nice to be able to put the face to a name. So I'm really glad and looking forward to having a very nice conversation with you guys.
Yeah, looking forward to it as well.
Yeah. So why don't we start out with that bio? Because, I mean, you and I have talked a lot of different times before because we met through Smart Catholics, and Dominic was a guest here, right, the founder, and Dominic's connected so many people. I mean, I have to give him a lot of credit, Dominic D'Souza. But I mean, basically, you have done some work with me through the foundation I represent. And in fact, you and I just finished up the 3-part series in July called Getting Back to Mass After COVID. And that was an amazing virtual event. And I just want to encourage people that if you didn't get to see that, to go to nonatus.org and to our podcasts and videos page, where you'll be able to actually see those videos that we did, which was amazing, to talk about this past year and what everybody's been through. So thanks so much for all you do. But let's get back to you and what you do, and tell us more about those life beginnings, because like you said, you grew up in communist Poland. Here you are in the United States and flourishing. Tell us, what was it like in your early life?
Yeah, so my early life, in a way, I was very blessed because I grew up in a Catholic family. I went to church regularly. Ever since I remember, I've attended some form of religion classes, so I definitely had the right intellectual formation. But the challenge for me was, especially looking back, is that I never really had an emotional connection with my faith. So in other words, I could tell you, the Stations of the Cross, the 10 Commandments, or whatever I needed to get an A on the test. But I just didn't really see how that fit in my life. For example, we went to church regularly, but like we never talked about the homily or the readings. Like the only time I remember us talking about anything that happened at church is being my family member criticizing what somebody wore or said at church. It was never really like about the message and connecting into our life. It's just something that we did. Similarly with First Communion, like to me, First Communion was like Christmas. Especially back in communist Poland, we didn't have a lot of things, and to me, First Communion was like the biggest gift that I got to date, which was a bike. And so to me, that was really my first encounter with communion, was that it was about getting things. It wasn't really so much about what it means to me spiritually and my work with Christ. And then another thing that really hurt me growing up is I had a very abusive grandfather, and he was just so critical, very, very, he's the kind of person that could choose the words that like really cut you deep inside, that really undermine your confidence. And so what I grew up with was this sense of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not whatever enough. And so ever since that experience in my childhood home, I was all about how can I prove to the world that what my grandfather planted in me was wrong. And so one of the things that happened was when I was 10, my dad passed away. And later, when I was 14, my mom remarried, moved to the United States. I moved to the United States. I was able to get into a very good high school, a Catholic high school, when again, I got a lot of faith formation. But to me, that was my opportunity to prove my worth. At the time, my mom started having kids with my stepdad. And to me, that even made me feel even more like a fifth wheel in my family, like I don't really belong here. And so it's up to me to make the most of that opportunity. And so while looking back, I would have still went back to West Point. If I had to do my life all over again, I would still would have went to West Point. But to be totally honest, at the time, I thought it's like, wow, what an amazing opportunity. Like I look at all these guys in uniforms, you see, heroes in the movies with the military experience. I was like, man, if I can go to West Point, wear that uniform, have those badges, then I finally feel like I'm worth it. All these things that my grandfather said were wrong. But the thing about achievements is that, it's never enough. It's never enough. So every time I achieved something, for example, getting to West Point, it was enough. Then it became school. Then I had to be top 10% of my class, which is a great achievement. But then it was like, man, why couldn't I be 5% of my class? You know, it just kind of on and on it goes. You get a little bit of a temper high, but it's not sustainable. And so that was kind of the background of my formation. Intellectually, I knew a lot. And obviously I was, pretty good at school. I was pretty good at figuring things out. But to me, faith was something that nice people do. And if I have some time after I retire, maybe, or maybe further in my life, I look more into this faith life. But right now I had a lot more important things to do, which was racking up accomplishments and getting to as high status as I possibly can.
Yeah, I always love to hear your story, even though I've heard it several times, just from Smart Catholics and from the work that we've done before. Even though you wrote the book called The Love Driven Man, and obviously it's a book that's kind of geared for men, right? But
Right.
I have an Audible subscription, and I love Audible, and I listen to the entire book in its entirety. And even though, obviously, as I said in the other podcast I did with you, I'm not a male, but I got a lot from The Love Driven Man. I really did, not only to help myself, but also to understanding men and even my own husband. And so I just think it's a great book that you can get on Amazon or Kindle or even Audible. And it was enjoyable to listen to it too. So I just want to commend you on that and invite people to get the book.
Oh, well, thank you so
book.
much. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, part of your bio is that you worked for ExxonMobil, not just for a little while. I mean, you were there for 10 years. And now, was that when you were still not really completely committed to your faith? Was that before? So explain that.
Yeah. So long story short, what happened is after I left the service, I started working for ExxonMobil. And at first I thought, I finally got to where I wanted to get to. I had a wife, I had a house, I had a high paying job. I thought I had it all. And so in fact, what I was, in my first couple of years at Exxon, what I did is I did this rotational assignment to Nigeria, where I spent 4 weeks in Nigeria and had 4 weeks off in Houston. And so I just wrapped it up. I just hit my 30th birthday. And I thought, well, what's the next achievement? What's the next check the box? It was to start having kids. And I was like, okay, it's time to start having kids because I finally achieved enough to feel like I'm a worthy dad, that I can, teach something to my child. And what happened was, unfortunately, is I found out that my ex-wife was cheating on me. And that was so painful. So, I mean, that was like the biggest pain experience in my life. I've been in Iraq, I've been in Afghanistan, and that pales in comparison to that betrayal. It was, I knew our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was the last thing that I expected. And it was the darkest time. I came very close to committing suicide. There were literally weeks, I'm serious, weeks where I couldn't sleep. It was just a very super stressful time. And as painful as it was, unfortunately, it was exactly what I needed to wake me up, because now all of a sudden, my house of cards collapsed. And as painful as it was, I finally had an opportunity to build a new house on true foundations, on real foundations. And, it wasn't overnight. I'm not one of those guys who had that kind of road to Damascus moment where I just had this instant conversion. It was very slow, but it was very methodical. And so what happened is during my time at ExxonMobil, slowly but surely, as I got closer to God, I really love this analogy from Socrates from the Republic, the allegory of the cave, is that once you see the light, it's very hard to look at the shadows again. And so while I enjoy my job at Exxon, and obviously there are folks who work for corporations, and there's nothing wrong with that per se, but I just knew that now that I've had this experience, I had a great opportunity to do something different, to really rebuild my life based on what I believe that the dreams that God placed in my heart. And so the time at ExxonMobil was really a time of transformation. So I spent 10 years there. So I had that realization probably like second or third year into ExxonMobil, but that was a scary realization. I don't really know what to do with it. I mean, it's like my whole life, I thought my thing was working in big organizations and having a stable paycheck, having some kind of a regular job. And all of a sudden, like, I felt like this was not it. And I didn't really know what to do with that feeling or emotion. And so that's why it helped me. It took me a good few years to grow closer to God and be able to discern what exactly is the next step that God wants me to do.
Yeah, let me tell you, I think there's a lot of guys out there listening to you talk right now, and thinking, man, I have such a similar story, because you know, guys are driven by success, and that's something that they just have inherently as part of their as part of their being. Like, they want to succeed in life. I remember hearing a talk by Nick Frank at Steubenville several years ago, and he said, the one thing that men want to know from their dads is, are they going to make it? Are they going to make it in the world? Are they going to be able to succeed? But and of course they want to hear the answer yes, like they want to hear that yes, but could be, and they're driven by this need for success. But the reality is that it's not the worldly success that's going to make you happy. And and that was so evident in your story, so evident in your life. So you have this moment, you have this ugly divorce and all of this stuff, and it kind of turns your perspective around. I wonder if you have some thoughts, and I would love to, of course, talk more about how to get guys to really live their faith. But I wonder if you have some thoughts for guys right now who are listening to this that could be in that transitional period, like in their life. Something has just blown up their universe. Because you said you're not one of those guys that had the road to Damascus moment. So if you're caught in this, and your life is blowing up around you, and you're realizing, hey, you know what, I need more than just this worldly success. What are some of the steps that you took during that time of transition that really helped you refocus?
Yeah, so I kind of was building the airplane while I was flying it. I was kind of winging it, and definitely there was grace involved, because I'm serious. There were really a lot of times where I contemplate suicide, and that's why I have a lot of empathy for people who are in that spot, especially members of the military. Even though I don't have the PTSD, I definitely had an insight of like how hopeless we can feel. There's a saying that suicide is a call for help, and I've definitely been in that space where it feels like it's only gonna get worse. There was just nothing to look forward to, and so a couple of things that really helped me looking back. First of all, it's a fantastic opportunity to get closer to God. And I think that what sometimes happens is where things go sideways is that we expect answers right away, and when those answers don't come, we feel like God doesn't work, or God doesn't listen to me, or God doesn't love me. And so I just need to keep myself protected and stick to what I know, because even though it's not working, at least I know the results that I'm gonna get. I'm not gonna be happy with the results, but at least I know what I'm gonna get. And so the thing to remember is to take time, create space, because as painful as those experiences were, it's exactly what I needed for me to really understand what the scripture is about. Because I remember being all these religion classes, reading all these stories about these saints or biblical characters, and talking about suffering. Like, for example, the Sister Faustina's diary, like the main theme is suffering, reflecting on Jesus' passion. And when things are kind of going hunky-dory, it's really meaningless. But when you're in that space of suffering, all of a sudden all these things that I heard started making sense to me. That I was able to connect to these characters, to their suffering. In that context of suffering, I found God. And so what I would recommend for men who are struggling, and especially in suffering, make that space for Jesus. I know that sometimes, especially if we're coming back to faith, we might not know the prayers, we don't have the routines. Like one fantastic thing that I really recommend for anybody is adoration. Adoration was pivotal in my, I guess, reconversion story, because it's, you know, it's one of the things for a priest to say, this is my body, and the church to say this is my body, but it's a totally different thing to actually experience it. And it's one of those things that I can't really put into the words the experiences I had in adoration. And oh, by the way, it don't happen every single time either. But it's, you know, like one great analogy that I heard is it's like getting a tan, you know, like getting a tan at the beach. You don't know what's going to happen, but you know, but just being in the presence of suns, you're going to get a tan. And same thing with adoration. Like I can't tell you exactly how it's going to feel for you, but I know you're going to get something out of it, you know. And so I really encourage it. So spending time with God, and if you don't know where to start with adoration. Another thing I really recommend is journaling. I mean, it's a fantastic tool, because what happens is when we're struggling, especially with emotions we don't know how to process, and we don't have the language, we tend to stuff these emotions down. And these emotions, until we deal with them, they're going to own us. And so I know that sometimes maybe going to therapy or to a coach might be a step too soon, or people are not comfortable. But the beautiful thing about journaling is nobody has to read it. But what you find is, like, the more you write it out, the more comfortable you'll be able at describing what's going on, how you feel, and you'll be in a much better position to deal with it. So that's like another wonderful thing that I experienced. And then the third thing is community. Seek out community. I know that sometimes it's not very easy to find good people to hang out with, but they're out there. It takes effort. You know, at the church, there's Knights of Columbus. You know, for example, there's That Man Is You program. There's a lot of different ways to meet wonderful people. And I know that it might not happen right away. It might take some effort, but being in the right community, it's like having workout buddies. Obviously, all of us worked out or in some shape or form. And, you know, you get a okay workout when you work out by yourself, but you know how much of a better workout you get when you use your body within a group. I think that's why CrossFit is so popular, and so that's why it's very helpful to find that community, find out somebody that you feel comfortable talking to, because that will help you realize that you're not alone. That person you're talking to, they're probably going through something as well. And when you hear those stories, when you're comfortable sharing your stories, you will develop that camaraderie that's going to help you make it through those difficulties. It's kind of like that concept that we hear in the movies Band of Brothers. You know, that concept applies in our everyday life if you find the right people, the right team to associate with.
Yeah, I totally agree. Bill, that was also a great question, I have to say, that you had for Mark. And it's because I was going to lead into that as far as the next part of your bio, where you say a tough divorce led you to a lot of soul searching and multiple life changes. And after meeting the love of your life, you decided to quit your job and commit yourself to coaching full time. So leading into like the advice that you just gave, can you tell us more about how, you know, your wife came, your current, you know, your wife now came into your life, and things have been kind of on an upswing, I think. I mean, life is never perfect, right? But definitely since you met her, I think that your life has definitely gone into a very good direction. Tell us more.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, the ironic thing is that after my divorce happened, I said, this is it. No more women. I'm done. It's not worth it. You know, I thought that there's no way I'm going to be able to trust a woman again. And in fact, what I did is I requested an assignment to work in Angola, because I just felt so ashamed. I just wanted to disappear from the face of the earth. And so over there in Angola, I worked a lot on the construction vessels. And so to me, I just wanted to hide. And I thought that I'm just going to do these types of jobs for the rest of my life, because I feel like I'll never be able to find a woman that loves me, and B, it's like, I just don't think it's worth it. But guess what happened? As soon as the assignment wrapped up, it was about like a year and a half. I came back to the United States, and what I do? I didn't just sign up for Match. I signed up for eHarmony, Christian Mingle, all these different dating websites. And you know, and I guess my thinking at the time was like, hey, as an engineer, the best thing for me to do is just throw as many things on the wall and see what sticks. And that's what was my approach. But the problem with that approach is that, and I didn't realize at the time, is that I had wounds that need to be healed. And obviously, you know, I definitely don't, you know, like when it comes to infidelity, like I definitely don't believe that it's my fault that my ex-wife cheated, but the fact of the matter is it's easy for me to just blame everything on my ex-wife. I wasn't a perfect husband either. There's a lot of things that I could have done differently, and all these things I quite frankly should have dealt with before even considering getting married. And so what happened is when I had these dating experiences, it was kind of like these deja vu moments. Like it was like a different woman but similar experiences, and it was just hurtful in the sense that, you know, obviously I had a good time. You know, at the time I was a different person, so I had a lot of casual sex, and those things feel good for a period of time, but after a while it's like, what's going on? And so as I was getting closer to God, I realized that I needed to do things within myself to be able to get ready for a holy relationship. And so, you know, obviously a lot of it was prayer. Some of it was also working on myself. For example, through therapy, I found out that I was codependent, and so my weakness was narcissistic women. I was just attracted to narcissistic women, and that just created a whole another toxic dynamic. But then another thing is me taking the church's teaching on sexuality seriously, because, you know, things like pornography, things like masturbation, things like sex before marriage, like, yeah, I understand that's a nice thing to do, but who actually does that, you know? And because, you know, I was always surrounded by, from the time I was at West Point, with men who watched pornography. I can't think of at the time one person who waited to have sex till marriage. I thought, you know, this was like, you know, nice talking point, but nobody actually does it. But the closer I got to God, I just had that desire for holiness. And again, it wasn't a road to Damascus moment when I, you know, and one day I stopped, you know, but in that process, it took me about a few years, but I quit pornography, praise the Lord. Then I quit masturbation, praise the Lord. And then when I met Jesse, that was my first dating relationship where I actually practiced theology of the body. Because what happened, you know, initially I didn't care about it at all. Then later on, as I became, you know, closer to God, you know, that was my intention, but, you know, oops, things happened, and, you know, and that was okay because, you know, it happened. But with my wife, Jessie, we were very intentional about following through theology of the body from the time we dated, and obviously even into our marriage. And so like, that's why to me, when it comes to the church's teachings on things like theology of the body, you know, to me, this is not some, you know, nice sounding theory. This is something that I experienced in my life, because in my first marriage, I did it my way and it was a disaster. And quite frankly, I should have not gotten married, because if I work on myself back then, I would have had different types of relationships. And because I did work on myself, because I did finally get myself to the point in my late 30s where I actually followed the church's teachings, I can see the difference. And obviously things are not hunky-dory. We still have our challenges, but I can honestly say that my wife is my strength. You know, we still struggle with things like infertility and things like that, but it's things that are outside of our control when it comes to having my spouse as somebody who supports me. Because I'll tell you, you know, probably one of the most difficult things that I've done, and that includes West Point, war, is actually starting my own business. I tell you, that brought up so many fears, so many insecurities, and it's so difficult. And that, quite frankly, if I had not been married to Jesse, I would have been right back into corporate America, which is not to say that there's anything wrong with corporate America, but I just wouldn't have the strength and the courage to persist in the dream that God placed in my heart.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. I love to hear your journey because you're very honest. You know, your bio and your story, you don't hold anything back. And I think people need to hear that. I think they need to hear how you've been at very low points in your life, and even your openness in talking about, you know, your human sexuality and your experience as a man and being divorced and going through everything that you went through. Mm-hmm. So if we could also talk a little bit about, you mentioned pornography. I mean, mm-hmm. Bill and I have had guests on this podcast that have also talked about that topic. And for men, it is something that needs to be opened up and looked at and find ways to get help. Would you have any words of advice for people who are listening that might still be involved in it? And maybe you can help them too through the coaching that you do.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I recorded a video for Heroic Men. Maybe you can put it in the links. It's a free video. You just have to give them an email address, so you know you get put on a mailing list. But it kind of talks about my pornography journey. But yeah, you know, when it comes to porn, I mean, you know, I remember like I did live teen for a couple of years when I used to live in Woodlands when I was still single. And I remember the statistic how on average kids get exposed to porn at age 8. And I thought to myself, no way, that's way too young. But as I think about myself, that's about the age that I saw my first pornographic magazine. And oh, by the way, that was in communist Poland with no internet. It was just magazines. And I still saw it in communist Poland. So nowadays it's so much harder with telephones, with smartphones and computers and instant access to internet. And so this is something that has been with me really since I was 8 years old, and it just kind of progressed, and to the point that I just did it. I mean, even when I realized that it wasn't a good thing, I just couldn't stop. And so the thing that I want to encourage people who want to stop pornography. This is not something. I mean, yes, there are people who quit overnight, but that's an exception. Typically, the people who quit are the ones that take their time and take it one day at a time and do not get overwhelmed with the relapses. For me, to this day, I can't tell you the last time I watched porn because, quite frankly, I thought I was going to relapse. But basically what happened is I just made an intention to create more and more space between when I get the urge to watch porn and when I actually watch pornography. So at first it was a minute, then it was a couple of minutes. And so I kind of build out that resistance muscle to pornography. And so, again, I don't remember the exact time I watched porn for the last time. My best guess is that from the time I became intentional about quitting porn to actually when I did it was about 3 years. So it's a long time, but it's so worth it. And the ironic thing is now I literally have zero desire to watch porn. Like, it's like not even a thing. It's like I'm actually disgusted by porn. If for example, God said, okay, it's okay to watch porn, why don't I watch it? It just, it's just really scary how something that I thought I couldn't live without, now it's like even like I have zero temptation to watch it. It's disgusting, but for vast majority of my life, I couldn't live without it. And so, check out that video. Maybe men can, put in the description there. There's more specific tips in there, but the main one is that it's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take time, but trust me, when you get there, it's gonna be so worth it.
That's awesome. I'm glad. I'm so glad you're open, and sharing and talking about that area of your life, and I'm also glad that you've just given people a lot of hope that's out there that may be struggling with this, because as you mentioned, people that quit this do it. There's certainly a few people that can quit overnight, but that's the exception to the rule. And so I think that it's also the desire to want to quit, and I think that as you said, you kind of build up the muscle. I think that goes with anything that you want to change. It takes time, and in this world of instant gratification, especially now, as you kind of alluded to, you have smartphones, you have instant access to internet. You can just plug in and say, I've got this information. Oh, I'm good. I can watch this. I can see this. I can get it on demand at any moment in my life. And what we've lost is the art of doing just exactly what you're saying you're doing. Between the time that I have the urge and the time that I actually go do it, try to expand that time for the bad habits, and that we have, and the sinful inclinations that we have. If we can just put that time in between that is huge. That is absolutely huge. And quite honestly, I haven't heard that approach in ever. So I encourage a lot of guys to learn more about you and learn more about your coaching and things like that, because I think that people can learn a lot and grow a lot spiritually and personally. That's the other thing maybe you could touch on is yes, there was a lot of personal growth, but there had to be spiritual growth that took place over that period of time. And was the shame gone? If you did relapse, if you did have a setback, was the shame gone because of falling in sin, because you were your intention was now changed to you know what, this is disgusting. I don't want this as part of my life. Like, I'm going to move on from this. Was that, did that happen for you? Did the shame fall away? The negative shame, the bad shame, not the shame that drives us into confession, but the negative, horrible self shame that we get from committing sin.
Yeah. So like, maybe like another way to answer your question, it's like as I kind of like peel back the onion, why am I watching porn? Why am I watching porn? Like, really, what I realized is that I didn't watch porn for porn's sake. It was because I had this deep innate desire for intimacy, and I just didn't have the skills to be able to fulfill that desire in a healthy way, and so it got corrupted through porn. And so to me, porn, like, it wasn't so much about porn per se, but it's like what it was like a form of self-numbing mechanism. And to me, it felt at the time like that was the only way I could get intimacy, because at the time I was doing some dating, and obviously, I mean, I watched porn all the way through my first marriage, and I just didn't know, I didn't have the skills to have like an intimate conversation with whether it was a woman or a man or anybody. I just didn't know how to do it. And so to me, porn was like my escape, because on the screen, obviously, like when we're having sex, that's like the most intimate you can be with another person. And so to me, that felt like that was like a cheap way to get that high. But the problem with that high is that it's not sustainable. You keep coming back. And so that's like really another important thing in quitting porn. It's like, for example, what I mentioned with the space, it's kind of like in sports or even war, there's like offense and defense. So like the defense is to increase the space between the urges, but that can only get you so far. The real way to help you, another important piece to help you quit porn, is learn how to build healthy, intimate relationships, whether that's with your partner or with other people. Because what happens is that the more intimate conversations you have, the more vulnerable conversations you have, the more real conversations you have, all of a sudden that fakeness in pornography is going to start losing its appeal.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I agree. And I like the directions of these conversations because it's helping people.
Yeah.
And that's part of why we call this podcast Sowing Hope. It's all about sowing hope into broken hearts, Patchwork Heart Ministry. And that's actually how Bill and I came together with this podcast, was the idea of wanting to sow that hope. So on the topic of the spirituality, first I had a question, if you had anything else that you wanted to share, because we'd love to also hear about what you're doing with this executive coaching, because what it says here on your bio is that you provide on-demand executive coaching as a benefit to C-suite leaders and their teams nationally and internationally. And so tell us first, finish up, if you could, anything else that you wanted to share on the spiritual part of what you do. And then please do get into this idea of this executive coaching and how you've helped others.
Yeah, sure. So maybe I can marry the two together, because really what I teach in my executive coaching is servant leadership. but the problem with servant leadership is that when you say servant leadership, it's like, oh no, that's not for me. Whether that's executives because they're like, hey, I didn't pay my dues to be a servant, or even Catholics. I remember I did this one interview for Catholic Gentlemen, fantastic organization. And then like one of the people made a comment like, yeah, servant leadership, that's a nice thing, but as a man, I can't afford to do that because I am called to be the head of the household. And so the irony is that people assume that if you practice servant leadership, then basically you lead from behind, or you're not being a real leader. So that's like one thing that really, as I reflect on the leaders who had the biggest impact on me, there were several leaders. They took the time, they were patient. They didn't get, if I messed up, they didn't write me off based on my first or second mistake. They really realized my potential and really helped me grow. And so, and as I look, that's what I want to do. But let's be honest, even though I've come a long way, I teach it, I'm definitely not perfect. And so like kind of going back to the theme of spirituality, like one thing that is really super helpful for me, and I pray it every single morning, is the litany of humility. Because as I look at myself and my shortcomings, that is the biggest area where I can still improve is humility. And so I pray every single morning, and I'm seeing improvements. Obviously, I still have a long way to go, but that's why I'm still here on earth. If obviously there was not much for me to learn, God would have already taken me. And so like what I do in my coaching sessions is help people become better servants, but not call it servant leadership, but by giving them the skills to better understand how they can be better leaders in a particular situation. So for example, like one common situation is giving feedback. A lot of times leaders are not comfortable with that because they're, let's be honest, who likes conflict? So if you go into the session or a performance review, or you have to give somebody feedback with that mindset that, hey, I'm gonna tell somebody what they're doing wrong, or I'm gonna focus on their weaknesses. Nobody feels good about that. You on the receiving end. Nobody wants to be told that they're not good at something. And obviously, as a leader, unless you got some other deficiencies, you're not gonna feel very comfortable about telling people what they're doing wrong. And so, like, what I teach people to do is look at it as an opportunity to serve the person, to give them the information they need to become a better leader, to look at it from perspective is like, hey, this is what happened.
I think we lost his internet. Are you still there, Ann?
Yes.
All right, I think he froze. We might have lost Marek's internet there. We're hoping he comes back online here. I don't know what just happened, but we've had a few of these.
That's right. But he's an amazing speaker and doing great work as an executive coach. So for people listening, maybe we have a break right now for a little bit, but you can go to his website and learn more at marekrudak.com. And what he does is he offers a free complimentary consult. So you can find out more about what he does and then actually, attempt to make that appointment with him. And as you can see, he's got a very good personal style, a good listener. And, whether you're someone who is looking for a job or if you're working for a company, he'll be able to offer you some great suggestions. I believe he's coming back on. So just give it another minute or two here. And again, do check out his website and connect with him also on social media. So hello again. We were just giving you a little commercial there here on the Sowing Hope show. And telling people to connect with you on social media and asking them to check out your website. So, hey, tell us what's going on for you in 2021. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit. I mentioned that you and I did the virtual series called Getting Back to Mass After COVID. And you can certainly go to the nonatus.org website and watch those videos and connect with all three of the speakers, which were Robert LeBlanc of Catholic Moment, Marek Rudak, and then, of course, myself with the St. Raymond Donatus Foundation. But then back in June, you and I also did a workshop together on how to lead at work as a Catholic. And people can also watch that at our own YouTube channel. So tell us more about what's going on with you over these next coming months and when they meet with you for a consult, maybe you can share with us exactly what happens during that consultation session.
Oh yeah, so apologies, and I think I'm actually.
I think his internet is just on out, folks. But I know he's having some work done, I think, around the house too. So that may be some of the issues, folks. But we're definitely excited about all that he shared with us today. And if he does happen to pop back on, that would be wonderful. But I certainly, there he is again. All right.
Yeah, apologies. What happened is, for some reason, my internet's going on. I'm actually going off my iPhone, so let's hopefully that'll give us another 10 minutes to wrap it up. So I really apologize. This is something that happens very rarely. So
no worries. Well, Bill and I are used to that. Once in a blue moon, it happens on our end too. Yeah. So what I was saying, So what I was saying before, we split off there for a second was, I was kind of recapping that you and I did the virtual series together. And can you tell us what's going on for you the rest of 2021? And also explain, if somebody's listening and wants to make that appointment with you, what can they expect?
Yes. So if you heard something that that really resonates with you, or you have further questions, you can go to my website, which is marekrudak.com. So it's my first name, last name.com. And there's a link to my calendar link for a 15-minute no obligation call. I definitely want to hear what's on your mind, and if I can help, then I'll definitely offer some solutions. But even if not, I'll definitely give you some tips and definitely be worthwhile for you. As far as what's going to happen for the rest of the year, obviously, with God in charge, we never know. But some of the things that I do know, that I enjoy working on is really helping men become better leaders, and becoming better leaders, particularly by becoming more comfortable with themselves and becoming vulnerable, and being able to leverage their stories to become better leaders. Because so oftentimes what happens is the things that happen to us, we run from them, but once we embrace them, amazing things happen. And so to do that, one of the things that I did start in Smart Catholics that we're both familiar with is Authentic Manhood Group. It's totally free. Go to smartlick.com, get yourself a free account, join our Authentic Manhood Group. I'm actually working with Heroic Men on a collaboration where we'll drop in a video every other week that's free and have periodic discussions. So that's one thing. Another thing that's a true blessing, and it's so random. A Polish agency reached out to me, and they're actually going to publish The Love Driven Man in Poland in Polish in time for Christmas. So if anybody who's listening speaks Polish, be on the lookout for that one. And also, like, I'm gonna, we wrapped up this 3-part series on the getting back to mass after COVID, which is actually a very near and dear subject to my heart, because interestingly enough, I actually, after COVID, I'm going to mass more often. I before COVID, I always went to mass on Sundays and the days of obligation. But ever since COVID, I actually started going to daily mass. I don't go every single day, but if I don't have any coaching appointments, I make it a point to go. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, what is the best way we can serve to encourage people to do more of that, because I've grown spiritually a lot, and obviously there's been tremendous benefits to my ability to be able to get closer to God, but I really feel like adding the daily mass, obviously, as much as possible has been very tremendous. And so now that we've done this series with Ann DeSantis and Robert, it'll be interesting to see what happens next. But I definitely would love to play a part to encourage more people to go to mass and improve their relationship with God, because it's hard and it's awkward at first, but it's so worth it. And without God, everything that we do, really, quite frankly, is meaningless.
Yeah, well said. And we are sacramental people as Catholics too, right? And so it's beautiful that you've been wanting to go to daily mass when you're able to. Not always, we're not always able to make it every single day sometimes because of circumstances or work, but it's beautiful that you actually have made that a priority for yourself. And because you know how our minds work. I don't know if it's the mind or the devil, they always talk you out of it. Because my thinking was like, well, if you go to mass every day, it's like gonna get really boring. But it's quite actually the opposite. The more I go, the more I want to go. So it's I know it's not easy to necessarily take those extra steps, and I've been there, but every time I've taken those steps, I just found how rewarding it is. And so that's why I really encourage people to go to mass as much as possible, because that's one of the things that makes us as Catholics unique. And this is one thing that I believe is, in a way, gives us an unfair advantage, having access to the Eucharist on a daily basis. And I know that people have different schedules; it might not be possible, but wherever you can, I highly encourage it. And I'm doing it myself, so I'm definitely not speaking about something that I'm not practicing myself.
Yeah, no, great stuff. Mark, thank you so much for being with us today, and just your humility, your witness, your openness. This has been just wonderful having you. We definitely have to have you back, because I know that God has so much more for you to do with our listener base. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I thank you too. And I also want to thank you that you and I have collaborated on some of those projects, because, in the Catholic world, when you come together with others who are also trying to evangelize, I think that's when things really start to happen.
Yeah.
And not everybody in business or even in faith related endeavors have that desire to do things with other people. So it's just really beautiful that we've been able to come together with people like Robert LeBlanc, and even today with Bill Snyder on this podcast, who wants you to come back. Again, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So any final words before we end?
No, again, apologies for the internet difficulties. It's like, it's just so random, that it has to go, especially during the podcast. But yeah, I definitely appreciate it. And yeah, if you have any questions about anything that I mentioned, yeah, definitely go to my website. And then if you can put that link to Heroic Men video about how Mercy helped me to quit porn, I'll definitely, I'm willing to share it, because that's like one thing that I feel is missing in Catholic ministry. We talk about a lot about ideals, which is fantastic. We need them, but I don't think we talk enough about how to actually get to those ideals, because that's a very lengthy, a very humbling road, and a road set with roadblocks, with turnarounds, falling on our face on a regular basis, and it's hard, and I've been there, and I'm still walking it, but trust me, it's so worth it. So that's why I'm very excited to share that story, because this is not something that I've been comfortable doing since day one. This is something that I really became really comfortable doing over the 2 years. And so to the extent that anybody can benefit from my story, please reach out. I'll be definitely more than happy to help you in any way that I can.
Awesome. Thank you, Marek, so much. For all you're doing. Thank you so much for what you're doing for the kingdom. I also want to remind everyone here at the Sowing Hope podcast to check out our website, patchworkheart.org, for more information about our speakers and all that stuff. But I do encourage you also to check out our new book, Hearts Burning Within Us. But until next time, keep beating to your Catholic heart and sowing hope into broken hearts.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or Andy Santis 2.